This is my new phono preamp. It is a less than $50 Australian part, I think, from eBay, and it is very simple indeed. I'm not sure about the brand name, maybe something was lost in translation, but that doesn't matter. It has no impact on the engineering. Phono input on one side, line level output on the other, also power in over here from a USB plug, and we'll get to that later, and some switches to turn it on and off and to select between moving magnet or moving coil phono pickup systems. I have different voltage levels. So very simple and straightforward. I wonder what's inside. Let's get the screws out and have a look. And there we have it. This is very lovely inside and exactly what I would expect from a good phono preamp. Perhaps not what audiophiles might, but as I've said in my previous videos, I think that high quality audio is a question of engineering. I want my electronics to pass the signal and to do to it only what is intended to be done to it, and to otherwise leave it entirely untouched. So sound comes in through here, goes across through this stage here, which is the bit that does the gee-whizzery that makes a phono preamp, and heads out there. I think this section here is all about power supply. It has a 5-volt USB input, but for producing audio, you need to be able to swing between plus 5 volts and minus 5 volts, or plus some voltage and minus some other voltage around 0. So here is a drawing of an audio waveform, and this is 0 volts, this is plus 5, and this is minus 5. And as you can see, it passes through 0. Now imagine if you connected that up to a loudspeaker. Convention is that a speaker moves out with a positive voltage. So the speaker is at rest, it comes out, it goes back to rest, and then it gets pulled in, and then it comes out. And so with a 5-volt supply, 5-volt DC supply, the preamplifier would struggle very much to produce a signal that moved back and forward around 0. And I suspect that this circuit, I mean, it may also boost the voltage past 5 volts, but part of what it does is create what we call a dual rail supply, one that has plus and minus 5 volts. Energy gets stored in this coil here, then the energy is taken away from the coil and switched over to be, as an independent power source, switched over to be whatever is required to create a plus minus dual rail supply. Comes over and powers these 2 op amps, well, these 4 op amps. Each of these is a dual operational amplifier, giving us NE553s, I think, which gives us 4 operational amplifiers in total, 2 for each channel. These chips are fantastic example of modern engineering. They have their detractors. I don't understand it. As I've said previously, I don't see that audio engineering is a state-of-the-art proposition in the 21st century, and these operational amplifiers are of incredible fidelity, and they are actually pretty good at rejecting noise that might be on their power supply rails. They I honestly don't quite know how this works in terms of its full layout, but the job of a phono preamp is to lift the bass side of the output from the turntable, and maybe attenuate the treble, I'm not sure, or just leave it the same. The reason it has to do that is that if a record was encoded with the full bass signal, the the track that the stylus would have to pass through would be beyond the mechanical limits of the system. So the bass is encoded fairly quietly and is boosted by this circuit, and the signal is boosted overall to bring it back to a balanced output, and that's just what has to happen. And I think one of the amplifiers in each channel, one of the operational amplifiers, is used in connection with some capacitors and resistors to emulate an inductor, which forms a low pass filter, or can amend the characteristics of a high pass filter depending on how it's used. And I think that's all that's going on there. I could replace these with, because they're socketed, with higher spec components. There is a chance that they'd oscillate because they would have increased bandwidth, but they would probably be fine. I won't do it though. These operational amplifiers should be just fine. I do love records, and there is a certain joy in knowing, a certain almost visceral pleasure in knowing that there's a diamond tracking its way through a valley and encoded with audio, which is going in a completely analog path, no computing of any kind, right through to the loudspeakers. I really enjoy that, but I do not believe that it is the source of ultimate fidelity. A high bit depth, high frequency digital source, I think, has to beat it every time. And I think that these operational amplifiers are more than up to the task when the level of noise and distortion from a vinyl record is taken into account. So this is my phono preamp. For my friends, I look forward to letting you have an audition at some stage. You can hear it for yourselves. It'd be a fun thing to do. I don't think that there'll be any kind of disappointment arising out of that experience whatsoever. And I think that's about it for the phono preamp. So hope that was a interesting tour. It'll certainly remind me of what's inside it if I should wonder at some stage when it's down the back of my workshop stereo. I won't have to pull it apart to have a look. I can just refer to this, and that's that.